Hi, I'm Captain Mike. This video is in response to viewer questions. I probably get more questions about plaster than anything else. I have a couple of videos about what you can use plaster for, making molds, repairing molds, all kinds of things, casting with it. Some people question some of the things that I do with it, and that's absolutely okay with me. Please question anything that you don't understand or you don't think that I did properly or fibbed about. But what we're going to do here is we're going to go over a quick, I say tutorial, it's really not a tutorial, it's just where I'm going to show you examples of additives that I have put into just regular plaster. Now, I don't have all the equipment to test everything that transpires when you mix different additives to plaster. I can only weigh the end results and tell you whether the additives makes the plaster lighter or stronger, and whether it actually did get hard, set up in other words. So with that, let me kind of zoom in on these, and you won't have to look at me anymore, and I'll go through the few little experiments that I did. Hopefully it'll answer some questions. Before we even get started good, and someone asks the question why I'm making this fashion statement about my sleeves rolled up, one little turn here is because I'm missing a button, okay? So that out of the way, let's get on with my plaster. I did a pure plaster piece, and all these pieces I'm fixing to show you, the additives and all together, they're all the same volume. Okay, I went ahead and cut them all exactly the same size so that I could weigh them. So this one is plaster. Nothing special. It's totally 100% dry, as are all of my subjects, and it weighs 138 grams. Okay, that's what that one weighs. Now, the first thing that I added, because one of the viewers asked for it, was what would happen if you put sawdust into your plaster. And I figured it would work, I just didn't know what it would do. So I added a bunch of cedar. I'm not going to say how much, because in this experiment I just added it until it looked thick enough to pour, and I said, well, that will work great. And it weighs 126 grams. So it made the plaster cast lighter. And if you can see, I don't know whether this thing will pick up with it or not. Let's see. Can you see the little pieces of cedar in there? So it added some texture, a little color. It made it kind of a cream color. You could do the same with oak, pine, whatever you wanted to, and you could vary the size of the sawdust. This was pretty fine stuff. Pretty fine stuff. You can see here how fine it is. But it works. I would imagine that that will add some strength. I don't know. But that's the cedar. The next one in the weight category, and it goes in the opposite direction, was some grout. This is tile grout, just like cement, but it's the stuff you use when you lay tile and you put it in between them. I have a lot of it. And I have been experimenting with the idea of making it lighter as I cast items out of it. It weighed 140 grains, 2 grains heavier than just plaster alone. And all those wonderful weird striations in this thing come from, obviously, it not being stirred up 100%, but I stirred it a long time and I still got that. So it turned it gray overall, and it makes some really interesting patterns if you were going to, say, cast in the molds like I do for outside yard work or yard art. That is the Grout. And let's see, the next one in weight is, let's see, they keep, well, this was it right here. This one, why you'd want to do it, I don't really know, but I just put some clay. I just took some dry ball clay and added it to the plaster to see what it would do. It weighs 135 grains. And I would imagine, I haven't run the test, but I would imagine it might come apart in water. In other words, if you soaked it in water, it'd be interesting to see what that done. Because the clay has not been cured, it has not been fired. No chemical, anything went on with it except the curing of the plaster, and what that did to the clay, I don't know. The Grout, of course, is cured, and the plaster is cured, and it's not going to come apart in water, I don't think. That would be a good test, but unfortunately I didn't do it. So we've did the clay, the Grout, the Cedar, and this one is really interesting. This one was the lightest of them all. It was 114 grains. It is obviously lighter than just plaster alone. And what I added to this one was micro beads. And you guys know what those are. Micro beads, those swell little tiny aggravating things that are highly affected by static electricity, that they put in them little comfort pillows and things. I have a couple of them I take to bed with me. I think they're really cozy, and I can hug up to them and call them cutie pie and things. So those are micro beads. They don't weigh anything. And you can put a lot of those in. I have added those to concrete, by the way, with really good results. But it has also sort of a texture. You can see the micro beads in the texture. So, you know, that would be an alternative for adding to plaster to A, make it go farther, B, maybe give it some less weight for casting, you know, outside art and things like that. The last comment that I got or received was from a guy asking me what would happen if you added vegetable oil to your plaster. Would it make it more elastic? Well, I doubted whether it was even going to cure, but it did. That's got, you know, some vegetable oil in it. I put a couple of teaspoons, I guess, into my little thing here, and behold, lo and behold, it hardened. Now, I don't think it's any more plastic. You see, it busted right off. So it did not add any plasticity to the mix. It probably messed with the integrity of it a little bit, I would say, but if you wanted to experiment with adding vegetable oil, which is about as extreme as I can imagine you can get, it will cure. The plaster will cure. Now, the last thing that I have here that I'm going to show you guys, because a viewer said something about you couldn't make plaster stick to plaster, and this was a comment in a video that I had made telling you how to repair a plaster mold. And I commented back and thanked them for the comment and explained to them that it would work. So I'm going to show you two ways, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before in a video, but I'm going to show you two ways that I repair plaster molds. The first one is real simple. Now, let me explain. I got two pieces of plaster, okay? Nothing special, just two pieces of cured plaster. The first one, I put super glue on it. I was real sloppy with the super glue. You don't have to be that sloppy. You can be nicer and make it more pretty, okay? I put the super glue on it, and it stuck. Let me tell you, it ain't going nowhere. It's stuck. So you can repair your molds with super glue. Be advised that where the super glue seam will be, it's not gonna absorb any water out of your, say, ceramics, your slip. but it won't make a big difference. It has not for me. It's not even noticeable if you get a really good repair. But just don't smear a lot of it around, because where it does hit, it won't absorb in that particular spot. It'll absorb around it. The next one that I've done that has to do with the comment is the plaster on plaster with plaster glue, if you will. Again, same thing. All I did with this is dropped it in some water and let it sit there, way longer than it takes, a couple hours, until it was fully hydrated. Then I took just some regular plaster, I mixed it up the normal way, and I skeeched it in. I just put it in real quick. If you got helper, it's even better. I put the plaster both there real quick, slop that thing together, and in this case, just to help things out, I put a little clamp on it. But I have done it without the clamp also, okay? Put a clamp on it. I waited maybe 24, 48 hours. I just went off and forgot about it. And when I came back, again, there she is. It's there. I'm sure if you tried, if you want to make an issue out of it, you could break it. But I have never broken one that I have repaired. Now, let me go get a mold and I'll show you some extreme repairs. I have here 2 examples of what you can do to repair plaster with plaster. And this is just 2 of, 3 or 4 or 5 maybe, that I have fixed. This mold right here I bought brand new, my little froggy mold. I bought it at the Atlanta Arts and Crafts show a few years ago. Bought it from Allison Ceramics. This particular mold is made by Clay Magic. Allison's, by the way, will be at the Atlanta show in 2022, this February 18th. If you can go. It's a nice show. So anyway, I bought this from Frank and I brought it home, and I was just a really happy camper, and then I proceeded to drop it. Yes, I did. Dropped it. I broke half of it before I ever cast a thing out of it. See the line right there? It broke in 2 places. I mean, it broke that way, it broke that way. You see? I mean, it was an ugly break. And I said, oh my goodness. I cried like a baby. And I stuck it back together with plaster. I took it, hydrated it, did it exactly like I told you and showed you, and glued it back together. And I've made many, many little frogs, happy little frogs. Now, on this particular one, when it comes out, there'll be some imperfections right here. Nothing you can't fix. I just scrape them a little bit. Listen, most of these little frogs go to kids or right there in my garden, so I don't care. I spend a little time on them. I don't spend much. You can clean that up where you'll never see it. But as a ceramicist, you know that. So there you go, my little frog mold. It has been absolutely wonderful and has done its job for a couple of years. The next thing that I did, because it's aggravating, it's not the end of the world, but it's aggravating, and that is when you have a mold like this, and this was one of those truckloads of molds that was given to me, and all folks throw it around. They had knocked a chip right out of the side here, big old chip, and it run that into one of my little holes that lines up. And every time I'd cast, it would, the clay would, of course, solidify in here. And if I wasn't really careful, as I trimmed this away, it would go into the casting and leave a hole. And I got aggravated patching that up. This is a rather big bowl, okay? It's got a top to it. It's just kind of a big oval, nice bowl. And so I said, I can fix that. So I took and I dammed up from here to here as best I could with tape or whatever I used. I couldn't forget, but I dammed this up. And then I poured, again, this thing was wet. And I poured the plaster into the void that had been knocked out, because that piece there had been missing a long time. I didn't have it any longer. And I think, if I'm looking at this correctly, I ended up with using layers. I layered 2 or 3 layers in there, and then when I got through with it, I sanded it very carefully, working the edge, matching this right here with this, and until I got it nice and smooth where it was totally acceptable. I prefer to leave it just a little bit concave, no, not concave, convex, so you have a little to work with when you cast it. You don't want it to go that way, you want it to go that way. But as you can see right here, this is all the area that was repaired. Can you see that? All right. That's the area that was repaired. It turns a mold that's aggravating and possibly worthless, in some cases, into an absolutely usable mold. All you have to do, hydrate the plaster, add new plaster to it, and just work with it. Become friends with it. And you will repair your mold. So that's really a little bit more than I wanted to say in this video, but I wanted to show you that it would work. That this comment that was made respectfully, and I answered it respectfully, you can repair plaster with plaster. Just make sure it's hydrated really well and take your time. You too can repair your little froggies. And as far as the additives go, if you want to try to make lighter plaster for casting or for casting in molds that make positives, have at it. In fact, you guys experiment and let me know. I probably won't carry this any further unless somebody comes up with a really exciting question that I just think I have to answer. Because I've drugged this plaster thing on for a long time, and some of y'all have already quit watching already, I'm sure. So there we go, folks. That's my expose on plaster. Different things you can do with it. So I'm Captain Mike. This is my video, and I'm out of here.